Can you see the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, so it's full screen right now? Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Please let me know if at any point you want me to slow down or speak slowly to understand me better. I can repeat myself, no worries at all. And I also don't speak Spanish. I speak English and Mandarin and Indian languages. So just let me know if you ever want me to repeat anything, I'd be happy to. So hi everyone, I am a Singaporean student, as Pablo introduced me. I grew up in Malaysia and Thailand, away from where I was born in India and where my parents are from, which is Singapore. And I never thought that I would ever be in the aerospace industry or that I could be in the aerospace industry because of what I saw when I was growing up. I never knew about space, and I only learned that I could be in aerospace or be interested in aerospace when the Malaysian Airlines plane disappeared back in 2014, and that is what has led me here. Because the Malaysian Airlines plane disappeared, I was really interested and excited about learning about safety. So I'm particularly an aerospace safety researcher. So this year, I was a system safety and certification intern at this company called Kitty Hawk, and they are building these planes that can take off and land vertically. So when you call a Uber or a Lyft, instead of having a car show up, there will be a vehicle like a plane that shows up that is charged on batteries. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on the safety of those kind of vehicles. And I was recently named Aviation Week Network's 2020s. Aviation Week Network has a global famous magazine that I used to read as a high school student when I was first interested in aerospace. And so it means a lot to now be featured on the magazine. And again, I did not think that I could be in the aerospace industry, and I learned that I could be in space as an international student through the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and I'm a 2019 fellow. Because being an international student is so challenging in the United States as an aerospace major, I am trying to build a platform to help students from all over the world understand what their options are when they work in aerospace in the United States. Because a lot of the places that a lot of American students can work in are not options for international students. And you can find me talking about being an international student in the United States in aerospace at Rikhi Roy on Instagram. So my story begins with the Malaysian Airlines disappearance when I was 14 years old. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, I first felt fear looking at the headlines, and it was really shocking to me that a plane could go missing. And as I learned more about this, I decided to do an internship. So an internship in your home country is a really good idea as a high school student, and that's what first gave me exposure to aerospace. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see my acceptance letter to the internship, where I worked as a non-destructive testing engineer. What that means is I looked at aerospace parts and components like landing gear, and I targeted X-rays at those materials to find what was broken or damaged in those parts. And by finding what was broken or damaged, I was able to contribute to understanding the safety of the system. And when I learned that I really had a passion for aerospace, I applied to the Georgia Institute of Technology, which is where I go to school now. So I described a lot of the awards that I've won or the things that I've done, but being a student, particularly an international student who is a woman in aerospace, looks really different. It is really challenging because there are a lot of classes and you have to balance trying to find an employment opportunity and being in engineering clubs where there are not a lot of students who look like you. So FIRST Robotics is such an amazing opportunity for students to get their hands on tangible experiences. But if you don't have friends who look like you, or if you don't have a good support system, being on teams like that can become more challenging. And so I was balancing a lot, and it was a really difficult path to navigate. And so I didn't want to give up just because it was difficult. And so I took what I could with what I was learning, and I built a website. I built a blog where I would write about my experiences, and I wanted to do, look, and feel better despite any failure in classes, any harassment on engineering teams. And so I created this website, which you can find now. It's called abalancingact.com. And I did it because I was continents away from my home. My parents or my family weren't in the United States with me. And so it was up to me to make sure that I could succeed with what I had, even though it was challenging. And I needed to find out how to do it when it felt really impossible. And what I wanted to share is, even if you have a good idea and want to do better, the people who surround you are really important. And the friends who surrounded me at that point did not take me posting online very nicely. It actually led to me being bullied. And I had a lot of hurtful and harmful comments when I posted online about trying to be better. And I think that was a really interesting lesson, because it taught me that the people that surround you need to support you for your betterment. And so nevertheless, I persisted. And in my third year of university, I was the only international student to receive the Brooke Owens Fellowship. And before I did my internship, which was in the space industry, I wanted to share what I had learned and about aerospace to students in Singapore. So you can see a photo of all the students that came to my event, which was a conference just like this. And specifically, it was for high school girls who didn't know about FIRST Robotics. They had no exposure to things that you already have exposure to by virtue of going to the school that you go to. And so the Brooke Owens Fellowship was awarded to me by one of the co-founders, who was the deputy administrator of NASA. And so in the image here, you can see Lori Garver. She was the deputy administrator of NASA under Obama, and she was the keynote speaker. And so the main message from my conference was that we must rise so we can help others rise. Even though I was the only international student that received this opportunity, it was my responsibility to share what I knew. And so if you receive opportunities that are different and you know can help you, make sure to turn around and help others behind you as well. So after I received the Brooke Owens Fellowship, as I shared, I worked at Bryce Tech, which is a analysis company in Washington, D.C., and I specifically worked on small satellite data analysis. And I met a lot of powerful women in space in the United States. So specifically the NASA Deputy Administrator, the NASA Chief Scientist, Ellen Stofan, and the Virgin Galactic Vice President for Government Affairs, Sirisha Bandla. So here are some photos of me with them. And this is to show you that even if it feels really challenging to work in the space industry, you never know what you can accomplish if you are open to the idea that crazy big things are there for you to have, and that you are worthy of receiving those things. Now, I was still really passionate about safety and aviation, and so I came back from my internship and I wrote a research paper on failure modes in aircraft location tracking. I was still very curious as to why this plane disappeared. How does a plane disappear in the 21st century? And so you can see a photo of me standing in front of my presentation that answers the question as to how something like this could have happened. But the year I graduated, 2020, was also the year when COVID started. And so despite all of these awards, despite meeting the NASA deputy administrator or the Virgin Galactic vice president, I still had a lot of challenges as an international student trying to find a job in the United States in 2020. And so I graduated in May 2020 unemployed. And because of my previous challenges in not understanding what classes I should take or just general growing pains as an international student, I didn't graduate with a very high GPA. And so I had 3 months to figure it all out or have to go home to Singapore and leave the United States. And the situation got worse because of COVID, because my family couldn't be there. I hadn't seen them for months. And I was navigating broken friendships and building new support systems. So even though I graduated, it wasn't as happy as it could have been because of the way the world was. And so this is where the well-being arc became really important. So I want to share a few things that I definitely had. I had shelter, so I had a home, I had food, I had water, and I had my family support from far away, even as an international student. And what I chose to do was, despite everything going wrong, I chose to feel hope, possibility, and limitlessness. And these sound like really big ideas. And what that looked like day to day so that I could feel those things so that I could get myself out of a bad situation was daily journaling, daily gratitude, daily movement, and daily meditation. And so despite being in a really tough situation where everyone that I knew in aerospace who was international was having to go home, they were getting deported. But I was able to be admitted to graduate school 2 days after applying, and I was fully funded working on my dream research all of a sudden. So this year I received my full-time offer that allows me to work in the United States on safety. And I watched my first flight of this type of vehicle that I described. And I took flight lessons with a friend. And as I shared, I was also named the Aviation Week's 2020s, and this is me holding the award. And on the right-hand side, you can see a side-by-side of the grades that I had gotten as a college student, which was not that great, but I was also featured on the Georgia Tech website. And this is to say that you can have really bad grades and you can have really bad experiences with friends or the people surrounding you, but through different practices like journaling or gratitude writing, you can end up on websites of institutions that felt really hard to navigate. And so everything that I've learned about using these tools, I share on social media, specifically through Instagram Lives. I teach you how to journal. I talk about what sort of prompts I use. I tell you how to make your personal website. I talk about how to get better grades with technical confidence journaling prompts and affirmations, and encourage you to do meditations. And so you can find me at Rikhi Roy on Instagram. I can stay on this if you want to write it down. But that's where a lot of my advice comes from on the daily, because I can only give these type of talks ever so often. And so this is my pitch to you. You might have heard a lot of different technical talks today, and I want to tell you how to focus on what's happening here in your head and here in your heart, and to use wellness to empower you to be a different kind of leader. I was so amused by the video that we saw of JPL as we opened this presentation. And I want you to think of being an engineer in that room or any room that you want to be in, but also being one of the leaders that can change and shape how these organizations are. I think a lot of times we are told that we should be in STEM or we should encourage the next generation to be in STEM, but we aren't ever told how to be the leaders that then get to make decisions about being in those rooms. And I think that if you focus on wellness and if you take care of yourself, which is foundational in your studies, that way you're not just aiming to be another engineer in the room, you're aiming to rise and to lead and to make better decisions for yourself, the people around you, the organizations, and the world in big picture. And so when you start taking care of yourself, you begin to feel worthy of the best grades, 4.0s. You start to believe that you deserve an opportunity in the industry of your dreams despite all odds, no matter what country you're from, that your boundaries matter, and that you can attract inspiring, stable friendships and mentorships. And so suddenly getting your deepest desires is not challenging anymore, because from the core of your being, you feel like you're worthy and you're deserving. And I think that's what stops us, is when we look at these videos, sometimes we don't see ourselves represented, because the people who've gone before us, who have landed rovers on Mars or who've made those important decisions, sometimes don't look like me or maybe yourself. And so if you don't see yourself in these videos, it becomes really hard to imagine that you can be the person making those decisions. And so when you begin to feel that you are worthy, when you write things like that down, then you can change how you show up. Then you can ask for what you want. And my belief is that then you can be that leader for the next generation. And so I want to equip you with some of the quotes that really helped me. So in navigating difficult things, I started to believe that I was the hero that I was waiting to see. One of my favorite quotes says, "Don't fall for where you are right now. It's not your destination. It's a season of preparation. Believe that your breakthrough is coming." I wake up every day and I fight for my life. I write letters to my fears and to the woman I'm supposed to be. I set big, audacious goals. The world you desire can be won. Be so good that they cannot ignore you. And so this gets to the meat of my presentation. And for this, I would love you to have a journal or paper and some pens. So I'm just using a black pen. And so we don't have to write for a long time, but I just want to share the benefits of you writing things down. And so no matter what you are, where you are, and what sort of problem you're stuck on, whether that is a technical problem, that is a problem at home, that is a problem with your friends, it could be anything. I want you to just open with the question, how am I feeling right now? What is on my mind? You can write down a couple words, you can write down a sentence, you can write down a few sentences, but I'll give you some time to just think about that. So as you write down, I will share a little bit about how this specifically helps me for STEM. When we write about how we're feeling, we want to be careful about the context that we're in. So an example is, what is on my mind right now? My human factors research. I need to figure out blank. I need to do blank. So I am taking what's from here onto a page so that it seems more manageable and less overwhelming. And so it can be for your project, it can be for your class, it can be for exercise that you still need to do that you know that's going to make you feel better. Just write down how you're feeling, what's on your mind. Okay, if you feel good you've written, we're going to move on to the next question. Feel free to stay on the first one if you want to complete that. But the next question is, what things make you happy about your current routine? What are you doing right now that is good and that makes you happy and feel good? Again, you can write a few words or a sentence. Okay, so to share how I specifically use this for my schoolwork or my career, one of the things that I wrote down that makes me happy about my routine that directly contributes to my career and to school is that I'm really happy when I can concentrate on my work, when I put my phone away in a different room and I can just focus on my work and I can get some good work down. So it can really be anything. Okay, so if you feel good about what you've written that makes you happy, we're going to move on to question number 3 that says, what makes you unhappy about your current routine? If you've noticed, it is much harder to write about the things that make us happy than unhappy. So you might think, oh, wow, I know a lot of things that make me unhappy about my current routine. So feel free to stay on question number 2 or move on to number 3, where you're writing the things that aren't working for you, that are not helping you, and that you might want to change. So for me, a thing that makes me unhappy about my routine is when I work till very late in the night. And if I don't wake up early and exercise, because that makes me not be as productive, or it makes me not concentrate as much when I'm working or doing research or doing my classes. So I know I need to go to bed earlier, and I know I need to wake up earlier to exercise, because that means that the rest of my day go smoothly. So that's an example of something that you could write about, something that makes you unhappy about your routine. And so question number 4 looks at what you wrote in question number 2 and then what you wrote in question number 3. So what is one thing that you can add to your routine to be happier? And what is one thing that you can remove from your routine to be happier? So you want to look at the things that make you unhappy and the things that make you happy, and think of what you want to add more of and then what you want to remove. And so for this question, after we write some stuff down, I'll call on 2 people to share what they've written down. Okay, so if you've written some things down, feel free to use the raise hand function on Zoom. And Anna or Claudia, if you can help me by calling on someone that would like to share, that would be awesome. And they can share in English or whatever language that they feel comfortable in.
Yes, so I don't know if there's some volunteer that can share with your hand, or you can put your answers in the chat. Oh.
Any of the questions or the last one we answered?
The last one you answered. The thing about adding something and then removing something to be happier.
I'm still thinking about that.
Okay, maybe I can share what I wrote. One thing that I would like to remove is that I'm sleeping less hours. And one thing that I would like to add is that I would like to have time or do exercise and dance.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I'd like to share too. I think I should be more social, and since I'm having a little trouble adapting to this whole quarantine situation and class online, and I should be less disorganized, so I can keep up with all the classwork.
Okay, perfect. So I think we can move on to question number 5, and we can always have an opportunity to share later. So question number 5 says, what are 3 promises that you can keep to yourself to prioritize your physical and mental health every day? So 3 things, it can be 3 small things, like I will wake up at 7 a.m. and I will call my mother in Singapore because it's 7 p.m. for her. It can be, I will go for a 30-minute walk, or it can be, I will read a book in the morning. 3 things that you know you will do, 3 promises that can help you prioritize your physical and mental health. Okay, so if you have your three promises, I would love to open it up once again to anyone who would like to share what their promises are. So I can tell you what mine are. Every day, I want to make sure I see the sunrise and the sunset. I want to call my grandmother at least once a week. And anytime that I am stressed because of work or school or anything else happening in my life, I will either meditate or go on a walk. So those are my three promises. If you'd like to share, please raise your hand, and then you can be called on.
Yes, Jordi, please.
Okay. So I wrote, because I have a terrible sleep schedule, I wrote, I will go to sleep by 10:30 p.m. I will finish homework before 7, and I will walk my dog every day.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. If anyone else would like to go, feel free.
Maybe I can. I will dance 2 songs a day. I will organize better my time, and I'm going to sleep my 8 hours.
Perfect. So, what I want to share about your promises is that the promises that you keep to yourself are really powerful because that is the best relationship that you have. So, if you've written down three promises and you can keep it, then you know what you are capable of. And what I want to share as an aerospace engineer is that we're going to be taught many things in our lives, and that the relationships that you have with yourself can sometimes be harder than rocket science. And this is coming from someone who studied rocket science. Keeping your promises, going to bed at a certain time, doing your homework by a certain time, sometimes those things can be harder than learning equations that you're being taught, because you can memorize those equations and you really can study anything that you want now from the internet. But making sure that you keep the promises that you make to yourself can really have a lasting impact on the things that you accomplish, the things that you think that you're capable of doing in this industry and beyond. So with that, I want to address a really large thing that hinders us from applying to certain jobs, from applying to certain organizations or clubs, or from partaking in certain activities, particularly doubts and fears that we have about our school or research or our work. So this can be with respect to the club that you're in, this can be with respect to any of your hardest classes. The next question is, what are your doubts and fears? So you're going to write them down. You don't have to share them. Just write them down on the piece of paper that you have. They can range anything from, I don't feel like I'm very good at blank, or I'm afraid of not getting the best marks in blank, or I'm really sad that I didn't get a good grade in blank. Whatever your doubts and fears are, just write them down. So, in sharing what my biggest doubts and fears are right now, I have a big math exam that's coming up and a big presentation next week on my research. And one of my biggest fears is that if my research isn't good enough and if it doesn't get published in the paper, the journal paper that I want it to be published in. And so I think what is really interesting is that when I write this fear down on a piece of paper, it feels a little more silly than when it's in my head. And so if you have this practice of writing down what you're afraid of on paper every day or whenever that fear comes up, it becomes less scary. And when it becomes less scary, you can push past that feeling and then go do that incredible thing that you want to do. So if you feel comfortable with question 6, we're going to move on to question 7, which is describing version of you at school, research, and work. You've heard a lot of speakers through your organization or through the things that I've shared. Between everything that they've shared and what I've talked about, what are the things that you know you want to do every day? And what does the best version of you look like? What is that person doing? What has that person accomplished? Maybe on your first robotics team, you are a leader of some sort, you're leading a technical subdivision, and that technical subdivision's work gets you to work in a really cool aerospace project or space project in the future. Or maybe you're doing research by yourself as a student and that gets published somewhere, or you reach out to a mentor that you really admire and you hear back from them. What does this person look like who's the best version of you at school or research or work? So I'm going to leave you a couple minutes to write that response. Okay, so for question 7, some of the things that I wrote down to help you think about how I describe the best version of me is someone who, for these research projects, has confident and thorough conclusions, who is doing passionate work, who has happy and inspiring moments with their friends and family, and who is unafraid. So with that, we'll move on to question 8. so that there's time for you to ask me questions at the end of the journaling session. But I want you to look at your answer to question 7 and then think of that person, think of that best version of you. What advice would the best version of you give to what you wrote down in question 6? So I want you to problem solve like the STEM inspired person that you are, and think of this as an engineering problem, but it has a little bit of a human element to it. Use your evidence in question 7 to solve what you see on question 6. What would the best person, the best version of you say to your doubts and fears? Why are your doubts and fears silly? Why do they not make sense? Why are they holding you back? And why can't you push past those doubts and fears as the best version of you? So I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so if you have a few things written down, I would love for anyone to share any of the advice that they've given themselves. I think the best part is when you don't take advice from other people, but can write back to yourself as yourself, solve your own problems, give yourself advice. So would anyone like to share anything that they've written down?
Maybe I can start and then I will choose one participant.
Okay, could I record you as you say it on your phone, on my phone, just because it's being recorded? Okay, awesome.
Yes, there's no problem.
Okay, go ahead.
My advice can be, you can change and make the things and dreams happen. And also, be grateful and receive the challenges, opportunities, and problems with your brain and heart.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, I think that I can choose another one. I don't know if Barbara Cano can turn on your microphone and share us what you wrote.
Sure. So about question 8 specifically is one of the ones that like I think I wrote the most. And I think that the best advice that I could give to like the best version of myself that like hopefully would be in a future as soon as it can be is that no matter that the fears could arise or something, what it's most important is for me to like hold together and also to find the best solutions to those problems and to start by thinking of the problem by its like roots so that I could find a better solution for each one of them.
I would actually like to share too. And mine says, if you can ask a question and understand it good enough for you to be afraid of the answer, then you can probably answer that same question correctly.
Thank you, everyone. That was great. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to share for this question or for any other question that they wanted to share with everyone else?
Maybe Francisco Camargo, can you share us?
Yes. Well, sometimes, well, what I would give an advice is that sometimes we feel afraid about something, but you need to take the risk and do it. That well, and no matter how times you feel you cannot do something, well, sometimes sometimes we already have finished the things. And well, that's everything. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you. That was great. So this is the final slide that I have where you can grow and learn with me. I share the things that I'm learning on these platforms. So I'm mostly on social media at Rikhi Roy. And if you have any questions, I have a submission form on my website, which is just my name. And my website also has my story, the things that I have done in high school and college, and the things that I am really passionate about. And if there are any questions that you have, I usually ask you that you send me a question on Instagram that I can share it with other people so that students from around the world can also learn whatever the answer to that question is. And now I'd like to open it up. If any of you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I actually do have a question. I really liked your presentation. I think it was helpful, very helpful. And my question is, did you ever thought of giving up?
Yeah, I think I felt like giving up a lot. And what I want to tell you is that without answering these questions that I made you write every day, I wouldn't be here because I had every reason to give up. And sometimes being in a different country, it makes you feel like the country doesn't want you. So why should you try so hard? But if I didn't try hard, then I wouldn't be here speaking to you today. And I hope that with what I've shared with you, you can share it with your brothers, sisters, friends, family members, because if all of us had this practice of looking at the things that we are scared of and then answering back at ourselves with the best person that we want to be, then overall everything that we would do would just be better because we would be unafraid and we would all do scarier, harder things. I am so many miles away from home, and in a lot of the rooms that I'm in, I'm the only person that I feel like giving up all the time, but I don't give up. And these are all my secrets. All of the questions that I've shared with you, those are all my secrets. That's how and I promise you that if you can find something in yourself to do every day or as often as you can do really, really challenging things. And sometimes the reasons why people are in those rooms in JPL or in NASA is because they don't have the same barriers that sometimes people from around the world have. It's not because they are smarter. It is not because they're more gifted. It's just because sometimes they were born in a different place. And so I want you to know that, and I want you to know that when there is that gap, that difference of where we were born, who we were born to, what kind of money we have, answering questions like this can really help us in bridging that gap so that we don't feel like we're behind, so that we can feel like we can be in those rooms too.
Thank you so much, Rikhi. I personally sound so interested in all the things that you did and you're doing. Thank you for your words. I'm so excited for all your presentation. I feel so inspired and encouraged. Yes, I agree with you that we are here, but also we can make great things and we can just trust in ourselves. So I would like to ask, how do you, well, maybe you can, maybe you had some experiences that you feel bad or depressed, I mean, with inspire someone. How do you feel so motivated to continue this line or this trajectory to continue inspiring people and also in STEM areas?
Yeah, so I think that with the internet now and through a lot of conferences, it's really easy to find inspiration. I think it depends on how you document it and how you remember. Because when we're happy, it's really easy to find that information online. But when we need it the most, sometimes we don't think to look. And so no matter where I am or how I'm feeling, I make sure to continue collecting inspiring material or content. And I have a list of things that I know I can look at that will make me feel better if I'm ever in a hard place. And that can be things like documentaries or talking to my family or even remembering where I came from. So that's why I have a website where I write how I felt. And so by writing how I felt a couple of years ago, if I'm ever feeling bad again, I can take advice from myself. And so what I tell myself is that if I wrote down exactly how I solved a problem a couple of years ago, if I have that problem again in the future, I can read my advice to myself. And so a lot of the times when you're in challenging situations and you are the only person that looks like you, or you're the only person who has a different situation, circumstance, sometimes you need to document things. You need to put them somewhere on your computer, on your phone, in books, somewhere, so that you can take the advice from yourself, because sometimes it feels like no one can help you but yourself. And so you need to be that person for yourself. Like my parents or my grandparents or my friends, they can't tell me how to be an international student in aerospace because they're not international students in aerospace. And for each of us, like no person is you. And so sometimes you need to find the inspiring materials online and then put it together, write it down. It's kind of like the quotes that I shared. I collected them at various times and I put them together on a slide for all of you. So I can go back to it if you want to screenshot it, but I use things like this when things are really hard, and I can use them when things are awesome and great, but I think it's really important to write things down or keep them on your computer or your phone or somewhere. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, well, I guess nobody else has a question. So I want to apologize because of all my technical difficulties, and I thought your presentation was great, by the way. And if you could all please turn on your camera, and so we can take a picture. And please follow us in Instagram. You can find us as 3933 Tamán Keet. I'm gonna send the link. Yeah, there is the link. So yeah, please turn on your camera. All right, well, smile. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much, Rikhi.
Thank you. I had like one last thing I wanted to say that I wrote down that I couldn't pull up. Okay, so I'm gonna read it out. Okay, so I wrote down, I want you to feel like you can be a leader, like you can change something about the world around you in a positive way, like you can be good, responsible citizens and change makers, like you can serve and engineer a better world. To engineer a better world, given the current most persistent crises of climate and race, we need to move differently, do differently to produce different results, better results than those that came before us. And to produce something different, we need to prime ourselves to think differently. Journaling is a tremendous tool that can help you do that, that can help produce immense results through problem solving, processing, and reflecting. And I wanted to equip you with those tools today that have helped me become a better leader and have a larger voice in the aerospace industry. Yep, that's all I had to say.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Yes, it was such a great presentation. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.